Hello, I'm Ava, and I am interviewing Dr. Bradshaw, who is a human geographer. Dr. Bradshaw, what is your job title and company that you work for?
Well, I'm a social science researcher and professor, and I own my own consulting company and I teach for three different colleges.
All right, how long have you been doing this career? How long have you been doing this career?
I've been a professor and researcher since 1997, so about 24 years.
That's a long time. What did you think your career would be in high school? Did you know what you wanted to do at that point? And how is your initial vision of your future career different today?
Well, when I was in high school, I thought I wanted to be a teacher, and I'm still a teacher. I first thought of being a high school band director. In high school, I played in the marching band, I played in the jazz band, and I still enjoy playing the saxophone in church and at Christmas recitals. But now, instead of teaching at the high school level, I teach at the college level, and instead of teaching music, I teach geography, sociology, grant writing, and research methods.
That's very nice. What is the pathway that brought you to where you are in your career today?
Well, I can point back in my 11th and 12th grade years of high school, I joined a club called the Model United Nations. And I love memorizing facts about countries like what's their primary exports, what do the people grow, what do the people eat, how do they dress, what's their educational attainment, what's their life expectancy, what are their religions, what's their music, what's their dress, what are their animals, what type of vehicles do they use. I love memorizing everything about these countries. And I also like to debate. And so I liked pretending that I was a representative of the country that I had been memorizing facts about. So I got really good at it. And when I was in 12th grade, I actually got to visit the United Nations headquarters in New York, where the diplomats from all over the world were. And I got to present the country of Senegal, or pretend that I was representing the country of Senegal as a debater. So basically, I used the geographic knowledge that I had learned from these countries with my debates. And I think that experience in Model United Nations planted the seed of my becoming a geography professor.
That's very interesting. The next question is what education was needed for the position you hold today, and what additional training was or is needed along the way?
Well, basically, as a professor at a doctoral granting institution, I need to have a doctorate degree myself. So I actually have a PhD, which is a research doctorate. So right out of high school, I got a bachelor's degree, and then I got a master's degree, and then I got a doctorate degree. And after I was a professor for a few years, I realized that I wanted to also work with doctoral students. So doctoral students, they engage in original research where they go out and do a survey on things that they think are cool, like their topics. So for example, sometimes in school, we have to take math, or we have to take English, or we have to take subjects we may or may not like, even though they're useful. But in a doctoral dissertation process, the student picks that topic out of every other topic, and then they try to become the world's best expert or best expert at that particular topic. So I realized that I needed more advanced statistics to help my students with the research process. So even though I already had a doctorate degree, I went back and did postdoctoral work in statistics. And every year I go to one to several different academic conferences where I look at what's the best practices that are coming out in my field of geography and sociology and research now. And I read 3 to 5 hours every day. So I subscribe to a lot of journals and to a lot of websites, and I read several hours every day. That's part of my ongoing education, because the world is constantly changing, and that's why I read. I didn't just get a doctorate degree and then stop learning. I continue to learn every day.
Yep, there's always more to learn. Now, your next questions will be about your job and career. Can you give us a brief company information, like what goods and services it provides?
Well, the colleges that I work for, they provide services in the form of education. So, education certificates and education degrees, like an associate's degree, a bachelor's degree, a master's degree, a specialist degree, doctorate degree, etc. And the research company that I own, we provide services in the form of survey research and statistical analysis.
Very nice. Next question is, what is your position and job duties for your company?
Well, the job that takes the most of my time is actually being a professor. So I teach courses in geography, sociology, grant writing, and research methods. I also mentor junior faculty members as they start to work for my university, and I interview prospective professors to join my geography team. And I also work with doctoral students, guiding them through their research projects. And for my consulting firm, I actually conduct original research, statistical analysis, and report writing for individuals or companies who hire me to do research projects.
Very nice. Your typical day. What kind of things like what kind of technology, machines, and tools, do equipment do you use? Let's start with that. What type of technology, machines, tools, or equipment do you use in your typical day?
Well, I use items typically found in an office environment, such as computers and tablets, smartphones, printers, and scanners. So I have students that have both PC computers and Mac computers and tablet computers. So I work with all different computer technologies to make sure that my students can view my courses if it's an online course. So just typical office environment things.
All right, next question. What do you like or dislike about your position?
Well, I love teaching students, and I like most of the time that I'm able to work with home so I can be near my wife and children. I like, for the most part, that I have a flexible schedule. I like shaping young minds. The only thing that I dislike is I don't like it when I see students with severe struggles of any nature while they are trying to improve themselves. But I like that I can try to help them out.
All right. Now, your work setting information. Can you tell us about that a little bit?
Well, I typically work from home in my own home office. I have a formal office in my home, and I have a desk and computers and printers and scanners and copiers. So I typically work from home. I sometimes travel to the university to record video lectures when I teach online classes, and I sometimes go into the university to attend different departmental meetings. And sometimes I travel to teach doctoral intensive classes where I spend dozens of hours in a week with 3 to 8 different doctoral students.
All right. Do you work mostly with people, things, or ideas?
I work mostly with people and ideas. So I'm interacting with my students who are people, but I'm interacting with my doctoral students who are trying to conduct research based on their ideas or hypothesis.
All right. What would you look for in someone you were going to hire?
Well, I look for someone with the right education credential and also the right teacher personality. So, for example, if I hire someone to teach for me, they have to have a master's degree or a doctorate degree in the subject that they're going to teach for. But that's basically the bare minimum requirement, that credential. So, I'm also looking for the right personality. So I want to look for someone who is self motivated and doesn't need constant direction. A teacher needs to be able to go out and teach others. They don't need me to be on them as a supervisor telling them what to do all the time. And I look for someone who has a kind and a gentle spirit. Teachers, they have to be polite and respectful as they navigate a diverse group of learners with varied experiences and different abilities. I look for someone who's like a natural encourager. While teachers must be kind and respectful, they must not be pushovers or students wouldn't get any work done. So, teachers must spur their students on to success. And I look for someone who isn't rigid in their personality. Teachers need to be flexible while working in any number of situations. So, if a teacher is teaching an in person class to 3 people, that's different than teaching an in person class to 100 people. Because if you're teaching 100 people, you can't let people interrupt and ask questions. So, and if you're teaching an online class or an online forum, you have to be more flexible than you would be in a in-person class. And sometimes you may need to be more structured in your thought process, but more flexible and patient with people that have different technology concerns. So I'll look for people that are credentialed, that are self-motivated, that are polite and respectful, that are encouragers, and that are not pushovers.
All right. And your last few questions. How do you use class content in your job, like math, English, foreign language, stuff that we would learn in grade school?
Well, I use math every single day to calculate the grades that I calculate for my students. So if there's 10 different assignments, I have to look at the weight for each assignment. Some assignments are worth more points than others, so I have to do a lot of math for that. My dad and my brother are lumberjacks, so I occasionally go work with them. And you have to do a lot of math to figure out how long is this tree and how big is it around. You get their different board feet, the bigger the tree, the longer the log, etc. So I do a lot of math with that. I use math and other forms of advanced statistics when I help my students through the research process. I use English every day, and I make my students use English every day. You know, like in school, you usually figure through the second grade that you learn to read, and then from the third grade on, you read to learn. So I make students write papers in every class I teach, regardless of the subject. So if it's a statistics class or a grant writing class or a geography class, I still make students write. And I have to write myself for my own consulting projects, and I have to write summary reports for my government related research grants. And I use the facts that I learned in earth and physical science when I teach geography, and I use the facts that I learned in world history when teaching my historical geography classes. I use the scientific method, hypothesis testing method that I learned in science when I was a kid when working with my students for the research projects. And I use geometry every time I build something around my house. So, for example, if I figure out the height and the length and the angle of my roof, then I can go figure out how many bundles of shingles do I need to buy. I use things that I learned in like health and biology class when I go to pick, hey, what should I buy this week at the grocery store? And then I use knowledge from different peoples and different cultures that I learned in school to interact with students, and sometimes the students that I teach with are from all over the world if it's an online class. So the things that I learned reading in the different books, I use it to relate to my students. One of the things in school, I learned how to type. And so now I use typing to grade my students' papers. I use typing to chat with my friends on Facebook or to text them on my phone. And then I write letters to my elderly relatives or other people. And I use the basics of things that I learned in climate and weather in earth science class to look at the weather patterns of where I want to live. So, for example, I used to live in Florida where the weather was a lot warmer and a lot more humid. And now I live in Virginia, but I have traveled several countries around the world in different places. And so now I realize, hey, I need to look at weather.com every day, no matter where I am at in the world.
That's a lot of different things that we learn in grade school. And your last question, The age-old question, why do I need to know this? Could you maybe answer that question for people who wonder, why do I need to know this about geography?
Well, I was going to say not specifically geography, but like in education in general. So I'll make a few specific things and then a couple things related to geography. So, for example, for your education in general, you must learn math to balance your checkbook and to make a monthly budget and to basically live in the modern world. And you have to understand English in order to understand contract language for buying a house or for buying a car or signing medical forms at the doctor or leasing an apartment or signing up for a gym membership, etc. And you need to learn how to type, as many doctor, school, church camp, and other forms require web based registration. And you need to learn the basics of health in order to eat, sleep, and exercise properly. And then, if I was going to say the context of geography, you need to realize that there are a diverse group of people from all corners of the earth. And as I mentioned earlier, for the example of weather and climate patterns, so for example, if I live in a northern latitude region, I realize that as a homeowner, I have to unplug my garden hose from my house in the winter, or else it may freeze and water may bust inside my house. Or if I live in a super hot place, I may have to bring my dog inside if it's 120 degrees. Or if it's super cold outside, I may have to bring my animals into a barn or into a shelter. But looking at perspective from geography, one of the classes that I teach a world geography course, and one of the assignments is I make my students do discussion boards on their favorite food. So, so I tell them to look at the history of where their favorite food originated in the world, and then where that food is grown today, and how does that food get to your house. So, for example, a lot of kids say, hey, man, I love guacamole and chips. Well, one third of all the guacamole in the world is produced in Mexico. But those guacamole ingredients, they have to come to the United States by truck. And then that gets processed. And that food, guacamole, gets put in a can. And then that gets taken to a grocery store. And then it comes to your house. Or, for example, some people like to import cheese from France or chocolate from Germany or beef for Australia. And then we could look at things like our raw materials, like a lot of the rare earth metals that go into computer products, they are mined in China. And a lot of the exotic woods that we may use to build furniture is processed in Vietnam. Or a lot of the olive oils that we produce may be produced in Indonesia, or I may have coconut products that come from Hawaii. So if we look at the products that we use in our home, everywhere from the raw materials to the food to our oils to drinks, etc., we are global consumers. So that's why we need to understand geography. And if we look at geography over history, we could see how the technologies moved along trade routes. So people along trade routes would adopt that new technology, and that new technology would disseminate throughout the rest of the world. And we also see that religions spread along these trade routes. And so that's why geography is important. Or if we look at, how do we have large population concentrations? When people learn to domesticate plants and animals, then they could live in one place instead of being nomads. And then when we had the division of labor, where more people could focus on things other than just food production, then somebody could be a blacksmith, and somebody could be a mason, and somebody could be a farmer, somebody could be a minister, somebody could be a lawyer, etc. So then, if we were able to live in places, then the population was able to grow. And then we have larger population concentrations, then we could have universities where people could specialize in their education. And so that helped with the development of cities and the development of education across the globe. And if we look now at our global interconnectivity, places in the world that have, Fortune 500 companies, they have major airports. And then if we look at from the global perspective, about 90% of the entire world's population lives within 10 or 12 miles of a major river or a ocean. So people are living near access to water. So, as a geography professor, I could go on and on with examples of why geographic education is relevant to our world. Even things like why are insurance rates higher in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, or Miami, Florida? Well, it's because hurricanes may come. Or why is earthquake insurance higher in Seattle or California? It's because of the San Andreas Fault along the Pacific Ring of Fire. So I could go on and on, but I won't bore you with the details. But needless to say, that geography is an exciting field, but the basic foundation of getting to be a geographer is learning your reading, your writing, your arithmetic, your typing, your scientific research method, and other things that you guys should be building out in your school at this time.
This
I
is all
enjoyed
very
speaking with you
interesting.
today.
Thank you for
Well,
being here.
God bless you all. You're welcome. I enjoyed it.
Yep. We learned very much about geography today, how it basically is the study of our entire world, where things come from, where they go, and how we use them. And so thank you very much for that.
You're welcome.
All right.